Welcome, Mr. Pal, to Knowledge Wharton. Glad to have you here. Just wanted to start off by asking you, so what does a Minister for State for Communication and IT do? What are your responsibilities?
Well, I'm a minister in the department, and we have three Government of India departments in this ministry, which is the Telecom Department, then the Information Technology Department, and the Department of Post. So these are the three areas that we look after in this ministry.
Okay. So what kind of things are you responsible for?
Well, we look at, like I said, all those three areas of work, but primarily for the telecom sector, it's mobile services, landline services, any form of communication in India, it comes under this ministry. And for the IT sector, it's the software, the hardware manufacturing, all these IT-enabled software services, BPO, so on and so forth, anything to do with electronics and internet and with hardware of IT.
Okay. So you went from General Motors to the Wharton Business School to politics, and then you won your first election when you were 26 years old. So tell us about the transition and the lessons you may have learned from those transition.
When I look back, it seems to have happened quite on its own, but it is a fact that once I did my MBA at Wharton, I went back to India and I took some time out to think what it is that I should be doing. And I said to myself, if all that I've seen, growing up in a family that had politicians in it, all my experiences, all what I've learned, what I'd seen across in India, traveling, so on and so forth, I thought all of those could be used on a platform which is politics and be much more effective. Because I'd worked in the private sector, I'd got this wonderful degree from Wharton, and I really wanted to put it to best use. Therefore, after a lot of thought, I decided to run for elections, and people were kind enough to have elected me in 2004 for the first time.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of strategies from your business school days are you using to solve problems that you face today?
But I think good education always holds you in good stead, especially from a college and university. Wharton and UPenn, I think, have really added to my worldview and how I've seen various things develop and the many challenges that we face. Because remember, most of the challenges today are quite global in nature, and one has to have a perspective that where the horizons are very wide and you're able to understand the issues so that you are best able to deal with it and best suited for the kind of policies that you want to initiate. So I think the experience and the education I've had, especially with the faculty and the kind of exposures I had at Wharton, I think have made me more well prepared to take on the challenges, especially in the economic arena. I think they've been quite beneficial. And I think education of any sort helps you in policy making, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, or engineer. But I think an MBA degree has been very, very useful to me.
I read somewhere that you spent a night in a remote village in Rajasthan. You slept on a wooden cot and had your meals with the villagers. What prompted you to do that, and what did you learn from it?
Well, while growing up, I had always been doing it with my father when he was a member of parliament and traveling across India, because ultimately those are the people that I represent. And I think by being with them, spending time with them, and understanding more of their sorrows and joys and being a partner to them, I think it's very, very important, because in India, the politics is it's very emotional, it's very physical. You have to be there with the people that elect you. And I think a lot of my peers, a lot of other politicians do that. It shouldn't really come out as a surprise as to why someone did that. I think it's a very natural way of being associated and being able to relate to the people who have put you where you are.
Okay. I also read that you had said that India must bridge the digital divide so that the other India can be the part of the growth story. So can you tell us what prompted you to launch that project?
Well, you see, in India, we've had tremendous growth in the last 15 years. But the endeavor of the government, and I also personally believe that we have to make sure that the goods and services of the government must be distributed equitably. I think every Indian has a right to be a part of the information technology revolution that we've had in the last 15 years. It should not remain isolated to just the big metro cities of Delhi, Mumbai, and Kolkata. I think people in smaller towns, in tier 3, tier 4 cities, in smaller villages, have as much of a right to participate in India's growth story. And how we can do that, because I think the internet, the information technology, the telecom services can be a great bridge between people, whether they come from urban areas or rural areas, whether they're rich or poor, young or old. I think all these divisions and all these fault lines can be transcended if you use technology and put it to good use. And IT, and I think in the coming years we'll see more of this, the IT has to be used as a catalyst to be able to transform and change people's lives, especially ones who don't have the resources to get access to that kind of services. So the government is really working hard to making sure that there is no divide, especially the digital divide. By giving people more access to information technology, we hope we'll be able to achieve that.
So what kind of challenges are you facing in the project? I mean, India being the way it is with the lack of infrastructure in some places, and we've heard about the last mile issue as well. So what kind of challenges are you facing?
Well, if you go back and look at 1995, our teledensity basically is number of phone lines per 100 people. It was about 1.5% because we were dependent on wires being dug up or put out so that people could get telephone connections. Once wireless technology came in and mobile phones penetrated the Indian market, today we are adding about 15 to 18 million mobile subscribers a month. We have about 550 mobile users in India. So it has really leapfrogged India's connectivity because of the wireless mobile technology coming into India. I think the same is about to happen for the IT sector, where we will have broadband access to all villages in India in the next 3 years. Because once you're able to create that infrastructure without the physical infrastructure being present by wireless technologies, by microwave technologies, I think that will really help us surmount the challenges that you mentioned about the lack of infrastructure. The second point I'd like to make is that India is a country which has 22 official languages. So Hindi and English are dominant languages, but almost half of the nation does not speak Hindi or English. So we have, from my ministry, tried to give software and fonts free download of all these 20 languages, so that people who speak Urdu or Bangla or Kannada or Sindhi or Gurmukhi, they are also able to take advantage of having a PC and having information available. Because if you can't read off the screen, it's really not of much use.
That's right. Let me switch back to the digital divide question for a second. So you have two very disparate audiences that you're trying to address, sort of the haves and the have-nots. So what kind of strategies are you using to get buy-in so that you can move forward in this project?
Well, I think the ones that you talk about, the haves, are the ones who have enough disposable income, who have mobility, who live in large cities or large towns. I think there the market forces will help deliver those services. There's enough private sector participation for us to meet our objectives. It's the ones that have been left out of this. Those are the areas that we have to focus on. So we have deployed enough funds. Our policy making, our budgeting, our fund allocation, our programs are quite targeted to those segments of our society which have not really seen the fruits of the economic growth that we've witnessed in the last decade. I can speak for this ministry that I'm working in, the telecom ministry. There are villages that are sparsely populated. So private companies will only go to areas where there's profit to be made. They will not go into rural areas, rural parts of India. That's why the Indian government has now decided to put up mobile towers and give the backbone infrastructure to areas which has population in villages less than 500, for example. In areas like the northeast part of India, the hilly terrain areas, the tribal areas, the really poorer states. Those are the areas where the private operators really are not that comfortable going in. But I think we as government have to ensure that even those people have a right to be a part of the telecom revolution. And to that end, we have got this fund, which is more than $4 billion. And all of that money is going to be used to make sure that we ensure connectivity in bordering parts of our country, in the desert areas, in the the tribal areas, and so on and so forth.
So, obviously, the private sector is important to the success of any enterprise anywhere. So I don't know if you've seen the World Bank's report on doing business and said that the number of processes you need to start a business takes about 30 days in India, while it's about 6 days in the US. So what would be this one thing that you want to do that will spur innovation and growth using that as a platform?
Well, I do think that it does take longer to establish businesses in India. There are other hindrances, like mentioned, the infrastructure, the deficiency of power and road network, etc. But I can assure you that the government is fully aware of that fact, and we are working quite aggressively ensuring that we are able to give the airports, ports, railway network, the highway network, as well as reforming our processes so that people don't face the kind of troubles that you had mentioned. It's an ongoing process. I think we've had some success, but I think more needs to be done. But we are very well aware of it. But we do have to work with multiple agencies. So there's the central government, the federal government, then you have the state governments, and then you have the local body governments. So there has to be compliance of everybody. But we are making sure that our bureaucracy and our administration gets leaner and more efficient in the time to come.
You said in a recent interview, I guess, that if India is more wired, then India would have fewer problems. Can you elaborate on that point a little bit?
Well, I think a lot of the issues that people have in rural India are more to do with getting certifications or getting paperwork done, or running from pillar to post to get a piece of document that really belongs to them. That leads to a lot of corruption at the lower levels and a lot of delays, etc. I also think that people have in India many ethnicities, many languages, many cultural differences, different geographies, different climates, etc. But if you're able to get everybody to participate in the IT sector and really use the digital mode to communicate and to meet and interact with each other, I think some of these differences that people have tried to really work on, I think they will also recede. So a more connected India, a more educated India, a more exposed, and an India that's more aware of the services that are being made available on the digitized mode, I think will certainly change the way governance happens. And if we're able to work with the government and have, like you mentioned again, the last mile delivery, it's very, very important that we partner with private entrepreneurs, with NGOs, with civil society. It has to be a collaborative effort. I think no single government can claim to deliver all the services. So we have to partner with people who are also equal stakeholders.
You had so it's widely accepted, I guess, now that the telecom sector success was a huge deal in India, and then it has made available to a lot of people the services that they ordinarily wouldn't have been able to get. So what are the factors you think that contributed to that success?
When we first started off with mobile telephony in India in the early 90s, it was prohibitively expensive. The handsets were expensive, the call rates were very expensive. And I'm happy to say today that we have one of the cheapest call rates in the world. Our call rates average between 1 to 2 cents, US cents a minute, which is the lowest in the world. The handsets have become much cheaper because the economies of scale have made sure that there's enough competition. And even though the margins are less, but it's a volume business now. So people have really taken to mobile telephony. And our tele-density today is more than 50%, as opposed to 1.5% in 95. So there's been a huge leapfrog in our connectivity through the mobile telephones. I think because of the call rates going down so low, because of the availability of the infrastructure, and people realizing how mobile connectivity is able to make their businesses, their interactions much more effective and much more efficient, I think people have realized that, so they've taken on to it very keenly.
So let me switch gears for a second. So where and how do you draw your entrepreneurial inspiration?
Well, I don't think I'm that much of an entrepreneur, but I do think that if you have the initiative and if you let people work together, there's enough creativity in India. Enough young people have so much to offer. They have the capacity and the skill sets to perform and outbeat anybody. And also the kind of self-confidence that I've witnessed young Indians have today, I think it's nowhere to be seen. So that's a real advantage and a real bonus for a young country to have a workforce that's talented, that's committed. And I think there's nothing lacking except that we have to give the young people in India a platform and a direction so that they can go in the right way.
So what is the one untold success story that nobody's talking about from India?
Well, I think there are a lot of successes, as also as a lot of challenges we face. But in the last 5 or 6 years, we've been able to, really focus on the priorities that the Indian people wanted us to focus on. So we've had a law which is known as the Right to Information Act, where people have a right to know of all transactions of the government. It's made the whole governance of India very open and transparent. We've had a compulsory employment guarantee scheme in India, the first of its kind anywhere in the world, that every able-bodied person in one family, one person will get 100 days of job guaranteed by law. I think these are fundamental path-breaking legislation that we've passed in our government. We're working on a food security bill that ensures food security for all the Indian citizens. We've got a right to education bill passed. So these are basic things that should have been done some time ago, but India never had the wealth and the economic strength to implement some of these hugely expensive programs. So we have affirmative programs, we have these social welfare programs, and our budget budget this year that's going to be implemented is in the tune of $250 billion. Just the government's budget, and a large portion of that is dedicated to putting money into the social sector, like education, healthcare, sanitation, rural road network connectivity, and so on and so forth.
So, looking back at the successes in the telecom sector, in your mind, what does the telecom sector look like in 2015, and how do you get there?
Oh gosh, that's difficult to say because the telecom sector changes every month, if not every week. So I think the landscape looks pretty bright to me. I think there's enough competition. We still have a hunger for connectivity. It'll go on for a few years. But the challenge, like I said to you earlier, is that the urban connectivity, urban teledensity is 140%. That means there are 140 phone lines for 100 people in Delhi, Calcutta, Bombay. But in the rural areas, it's 20%. So there's a mismatch there. But we need to fix that. That's why even the private operators now realize that there's money to be made in the rural markets. So they're all, after having saturated the big cities, are now pushing towards the smaller towns and villages, which again I think is a good thing. So I think the Indian telecom sector is bound to grow. We'll have many more value-added services. We're looking at ways of exploring mobile banking, for example. We have 3G auctions going on right now. Then you will have video conferencing, live television. All of those things were never thought of 10 years ago. It's an ever-changing world, and I think it will only bear fruits for the Indian society and the Indian economy.
Yeah. On behalf of Knowledge at Wharton, I want to thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you for having me.